The hum was a low, insistent vibration in his chest, a discordant note in the symphony of the city. For Leo, a sound designer who sculpted auditory worlds for a living, the irony was a bitter pill. He could orchestrate the roar of a dragon, the whisper of a ghost, the delicate flutter of a hummingbird's wings, yet he couldn't silence the cacophony within his own soul. He stood in his soundproof studio, a sanctuary designed to keep the world at bay, but the most deafening noise was the one that emanated from the space between his ears. It was the relentless static of unfulfilled potential, the screeching feedback of other people's expectations, the haunting echo of a purpose he could feel but couldn't quite hear. He had chased the perfect frequency, the ultimate clarity in his work, but his own life was a distorted mess of conflicting signals. A choice loomed before him, a choice between continuing to manipulate the sounds of a fictional world, or finally having the courage to face the terrifying silence of his own. What if the key to finding his own frequency, his own purpose, was to turn off all the noise, both external and internal, and listen to the one sound he had been avoiding his entire life, the sound of his own heart beating in the stillness? The world screams for your attention. It's a relentless assault on your senses, a constant barrage of information, entertainment, and obligation. From the moment you wake to the moment you collapse into a restless sleep, you are inundated with noise. The noise of social media telling you who to be, what to desire, how to live. The noise of the news feeding you a steady diet of fear and outrage. The noise of your own ambition urging you to climb higher, to achieve more, to never be satisfied. And in this deafening din, have you ever stopped to consider what you might be missing? Have you ever dared to wonder what truths might be revealed in the quiet spaces between the notes of your chaotic life? We have been conditioned to believe that silence is emptiness, that stillness is stagnation, that to be quiet is to be irrelevant. But what if the opposite is true? What if the silence is not empty but full? Full of wisdom, full of clarity, full of a power so profound it can transform you from a pawn in the game of life to the master of your own destiny. This isn't about finding a momentary escape from the chaos. This is about discovering a permanent sanctuary within yourself, a fortress of silence that can withstand any storm. It's about learning to tune out the static of the world so you can finally tune into the crystal-clear frequency of your purpose. The man in the silent room was named Leo. He was a prodigy in his field, a virtuoso of vibration. He could take a mundane sound, the clinking of a spoon against a ceramic mug, and transform it into the sound of a 1,000-year-old bell tolling in a forgotten temple. He was a magician of the auditory, a weaver of sonic tapestries that could transport listeners to other worlds. But the man who could create entire universes of sound was lost in his own. His life was a testament to the power of noise. He had used it to build his career, to win awards, to earn the admiration of his peers. But he had also used it to drown out the things he didn't want to hear. The quiet disappointment in his father's voice when he had chosen art over a more practical career. The gentle pleading in his ex-girlfriend's eyes as she had begged him to be more present, to connect with her on a deeper level. The soft, persistent whisper in his own soul, a whisper that told him he was meant for something more than just creating illusions. His studio, with its thick, insulated walls and state-of-the-art equipment, was his refuge. It was a place where he could control the noise, where he could shape it to his will. But it was also his prison. He would spend days, sometimes weeks, locked away, losing himself in the intricate details of a soundscape, only to emerge, blinking and disoriented, into a life that felt increasingly alien and meaningless. The applause he received for his work was a fleeting high, a temporary distraction from the gnawing emptiness that resided in his core. He was a master of 1,000 sounds, but he had forgotten the sound of his own laughter. He could create the illusion of a thunderstorm, but he had lost the ability to feel the rain on his own skin. He was a man who was so busy listening to the world he had created that he had stopped listening to the world that had created him. One night, after a particularly grueling project, a project that had pushed him to the very limits of his creative and technical abilities, Leo found himself sitting in the darkness of his studio, the silence more deafening than any sound he had ever created. The project was a masterpiece, a symphony of sound that would undoubtedly win him more awards, more accolades, more empty praise. But in that moment of post-creation stillness, all he could feel was a profound sense of desolation. He had poured every ounce of his being into this project, and now that it was finished, he was left with nothing but a hollow echo of his own ambition. It was in that moment of utter emptiness that he made a decision that would terrify him, that would challenge him, that would ultimately save him. He reached out and he turned off the power. He silenced the machines that had been his constant companions, his co-conspirators in the art of noise. And in the absolute pitch-black silence, he did something he hadn't done in years. He listened. He listened to the frantic thumping of his own heart, a drumbeat of fear and anticipation. He listened to the shallow whisper of his own breath, a fragile testament to his own existence. And beneath it all, he heard a new sound. A sound so faint, so subtle that he had never noticed it before. It was the sound of silence itself. And in that sound, he heard a question. A question that would become the North Star of his new journey. Who are you when all the noise is gone? The next morning, Leo did something that would have been unthinkable just a day before. He left his studio. He didn't take his phone. He didn't take his headphones. He didn't take anything that could create a barrier of noise between him and the world. He just walked. He walked through the city, a city that he had only ever experienced as a collection of sounds to be recorded, to be manipulated, to be controlled. But now, without his equipment, without his professional filter, he was just a man in a city. And for the first time, he truly heard it. He heard the symphony of a million lives being lived, the raw, unfiltered, chaotic beauty of it all. He heard the laughter of children playing in a park, the passionate argument of a couple on a street corner, the soulful melody of a lone saxophonist in the subway. He heard the city not as a source of raw material for his art, but as a living, breathing entity, a vibrant tapestry of human experience. He found himself drawn to a small, dusty bookstore, a place he hadn't entered since he was a child. He ran his fingers over the spines of the books, the scent of old paper and ink a welcome respite from the sterile, metallic smell of his studio. And then he saw it. A thin volume tucked away in a corner, its title simple and direct, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He had heard the name before, a Roman emperor, a philosopher king. On a whim, he bought the book. He took it to a nearby park, sat on a bench, and began to read. And as he read the words of a man who had lived 2,000 years ago, a man who had commanded armies and ruled an empire, he felt a strange sense of connection, of kinship. He read about the power of our own minds to create our own reality. He read about the importance of living a life of virtue, of reason, of purpose. He read about the futility of chasing external validation, of seeking happiness in things that are beyond our control. The words of Marcus Aurelius were not just words on a page. They were a lifeline. They were a mirror reflecting back to him the very struggles, the very longings that he had been trying to drown out with noise. He realized that for years he had been living like a slave to his ambition, a slave to the opinions of others, a slave to the insatiable hunger of his own ego. The Stoics, these ancient masters of the soul, were offering him a different way. A way of freedom, of tranquility, of a power that came not from controlling the world, but from controlling himself. A power that was not loud and boisterous, but quiet and unshakable. A power that was forged not in the crucible of creation, but in the crucible of character. That day marked a turning point in Leo's life. He didn't abandon his art. He didn't sell his studio, but he began to approach his life and his work in a fundamentally different way. He started to cultivate silence, not as an absence of sound, but as a presence of mind. He began a daily practice of meditation, sitting in the stillness of his studio not to create, but to simply be, to observe his thoughts without judgment, to watch them come and go like clouds in the sky. He started to take silent walks every day, leaving all his technology behind and just immersing himself in the sensory experience of the world around him. He started to practice the art of deep listening, not just with his ears but with his whole being. He listened to the people in his life, not just to their words, but to the silence between the words, to the emotions that lay hidden beneath the surface. And as he cultivated this inner and outer silence, something remarkable began to happen. The noise in his head, the static of his anxiety, his insecurity, his relentless ambition began to fade. And in its place, he began to hear something new. A clear, resonant frequency, a note that was so pure, so authentic that he knew it could only be coming from one place, the very core of his own being. It was the sound of his purpose. And it was a sound that was more beautiful, more powerful, more life-affirming than any sound he had ever created. He realized that his gift was not just to create sounds, but to help people listen, to help them listen to the world, to each other, and most importantly, to themselves. His purpose was not to create illusions, but to reveal truths, to use his art not as a form of escapism, but as a form of connection. Leo's work began to change. He still created soundscapes for films and games, but now they were imbued with a new depth, a new emotional resonance. He also started a new project, a project that was born from his own journey. He created a series of sonic meditations, soundscapes designed to help people find a place of stillness in their own minds. He used the sounds of nature, the gentle rhythm of a human heartbeat, the subtle frequencies that are said to promote a state of calm and clarity. The project was a massive success, touching the lives of millions of people around the world. He had found a way to use his passion, his talent, his unique gift to serve something greater than himself. He had found a way to turn his own struggle into a source of healing for others. One evening, Leo found himself standing in his studio, the same room where he had once felt so lost, so trapped. But now the room felt different. It was no longer a prison, but a sanctuary. It was no longer a place to hide from the world, but a place to connect with it. He looked at his equipment, the complex array of knobs and dials and screens, and he smiled. He was still a master of sound, but he was no longer a slave to it. He had learned that the most profound sounds are not the ones we create, but the ones we discover. And the most important discovery of all is the sound of our own purpose, a sound that can only be heard in the silence. He had learned that true power is not about making noise, but about having a presence that is so calm, so centered, so authentic, that it doesn't need to make a sound to be felt. Do you ever feel like Leo? Do you ever feel like you're living in a world of your own creation, a world that is so full of noise that you can no longer hear the voice of your own soul? Do you ever achieve a long sought-after goal, only to find yourself feeling empty and unfulfilled, wondering, is this all there is? The modern world is a conspiracy against silence. It is a constant, unrelenting assault on our attention, our focus, our inner peace. We are conditioned to believe that to be busy is to be important, that to be loud is to be powerful, that to be constantly connected is to be alive. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if the very things we are chasing, the very noise we are creating, are the very things that are keeping us from the one thing we truly desire? A life of meaning, of purpose, of deep and lasting fulfillment. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome understood this profound truth. They knew that the key to a flourishing life, a life of eudaimonia, was not to be found in the external world of fame, fortune, and power, but in the internal world of our own minds. They taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgments about events. They taught that we have the power to choose our response to any situation, to find a sense of calm and clarity even in the midst of the most chaotic circumstances. And the gateway to this inner kingdom, the first and most crucial step on the path of the Stoic, is the practice of silencing the noise. Not just the noise of the world, but the far more insidious noise of our own minds. The noise of our incessant desires, our irrational fears, our inflated ego. The noise that keeps us trapped in a cycle of craving and aversion, of hope and despair. This is not some esoteric philosophy for academics and armchair thinkers. This is a practical, life-altering toolkit for anyone who is brave enough to look within. It is about learning to become the observer of your own thoughts, rather than being a slave to them. It is about learning to distinguish between what is within your control and what is not, and to focus your energy exclusively on the former. It is about learning to find the music in the madness, the order in the chaos, the hidden purpose in every challenge, every setback, every moment of pain. It is about becoming the composer of your own life symphony, a symphony that is not defined by its loudness, but by its beauty, its harmony, its profound and resonant silence. Are you ready to pick up the baton? Are you ready to silence the noise and to finally hear the masterpiece that has been waiting to be conducted within you? If the answer is yes, then your journey into the heart of Stoic wisdom, into the heart of your own true self, begins now. Let us explore the ancient techniques that can help you to quiet your mind, to find your focus, and to unlock the incredible power that lies dormant in the silence. The world will not get any quieter, but you can. And in that quiet, you will find a strength, a purpose, and a peace that will change everything. The first and most fundamental practice in our quest to silence the noise is what the Stoics called the discipline of perception. This is the art of seeing things as they truly are, stripped bare of our subjective judgments, our emotional reactions, and our preconceived notions. It is about recognizing that the world is not inherently good or bad, right or wrong, fair or unfair. It simply is. It is our minds that add the layer of interpretation, the layer of judgment that causes us so much turmoil. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it best when he said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This is a revolutionary idea, an idea that has the power to shift your entire experience of life. It means that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the creator of your own reality. So how do we practice this discipline of perception? It begins with a simple yet profound act of mental separation. When you are faced with a challenging situation, a situation that triggers a strong emotional response, you must learn to pause, to take a deep breath, and to create a space between the event and your reaction to it. In that space, you must ask yourself a crucial question. What is actually happening here, and what is my interpretation of what is happening? For example, let's say your boss gives you some critical feedback on a project you've been working on. The external event is simply that your boss has spoken certain words to you. That is the objective reality, but the internal noise can be deafening. The voice of your ego screams, "He thinks I'm incompetent. My career is over. I'm a failure." The voice of your fear whispers, "I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose everything." And before you know it, you are in a downward spiral of anxiety and despair. Now let's apply the discipline of perception. You pause, you breathe, you separate the event from your judgment. The event, "My boss has provided feedback on my work." The judgment, "He thinks I'm a failure and my life is over." You recognize that the judgment is not a part of the event itself. It is something you have added. It is a story you are telling yourself. And because you are the author of that story, you have the power to change it. You can choose to see the feedback not as an attack, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to learn, to grow, to improve your skills. You can choose to see your boss not as an adversary, but as a mentor, someone who is invested in your development. You can choose to see the situation not as a catastrophe, but as a challenge, a test of your resilience, your humility, your ability to learn from your mistakes. This is the power of the discipline of perception. It is the power to reframe any situation, to find the hidden gift in any adversity. The Stoics had a saying, "The obstacle is the way." They believed that every challenge we face is an opportunity to practice virtue, to strengthen our character, to become a better version of ourselves. A difficult person is an opportunity to practice patience. A financial setback is an opportunity to practice frugality. A health problem is an opportunity to practice courage. This is not about denying reality or pretending that bad things don't happen. It is about choosing to focus on what you can control, which is your own response. It is about finding a sense of purpose and meaning even in the most difficult of circumstances. The practice of the discipline of perception is like building a muscle. It requires consistent effort, daily training. You can start by practicing on small things. The next time you're stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, practice seeing it as an opportunity to listen to an audiobook or to simply enjoy a moment of stillness. The next time someone is rude to you, instead of getting angry, practice seeing it as an opportunity to practice compassion, to wonder what kind of pain that person might be going through. The more you practice this mental discipline, the stronger it will become. And over time, you will find that the noise in your head, the noise of your own reactive judgments, will begin to quiet down. You will begin to experience a sense of inner peace, a sense of equanimity that is not dependent on the ever-changing circumstances of your life. You will have built a fortress of silence within yourself, a sanctuary that no external event can penetrate. This is the first and most crucial step on the path to silencing the noise and hearing the clear, unwavering voice of your own purpose. It is the foundation upon which the entire edifice of a good life is built. Once you have begun to master the discipline of perception, to quiet the noise of your own judgments, you are ready for the second stage of your Stoic training, the discipline of action. It is not enough to simply see the world with clarity. We must also act in the world with purpose, with virtue, with a sense of our place in the grand cosmic order. The Stoics believe that we are all social creatures, that we are all part of a larger whole, a vast, interconnected web of humanity. And they believed that our ultimate purpose is to live in service to this whole, to contribute our own unique gifts to the betterment of our community, of our world. This is what they meant by living in accordance with nature. It means recognizing that we are not isolated individuals, but integral parts of a larger organism, and that our own flourishing is inextricably linked to the flourishing of all. But how do we know what the right action is? How do we navigate the complex moral dilemmas of our daily lives? This is where the silence we have cultivated becomes our most trusted guide. When our minds are clear, when we are free from the distortions of our own ego, our own fears, our own desires, we can begin to access a deeper wisdom, a more profound sense of what is right and what is wrong. We can begin to hear the voice of our conscience, the voice of reason, the voice of what the Stoics called the daimon, our own inner guiding spirit. This is the voice of our purpose, and it will always point us in the direction of virtue. Let's return to our friend Leo, the sound designer. After he began to practice the discipline of perception, he started to see his work in a new light. He realized that for years, he had been driven by a desire for fame, for recognition, for external validation. He had been creating soundscapes that were technically brilliant, but emotionally hollow. He had been contributing to the noise of the world, rather than to its harmony. But as he began to listen to the quiet voice within, he started to feel a different calling. He started to feel a desire to use his talents for something more than just his own self-aggrandizement. He started to feel a responsibility to use his gift to help others, to bring a sense of peace and healing to a world that was so full of noise and chaos. This led him to create his Sonic Meditations, a project that was a radical departure from his previous work. It was a project that was not about impressing critics or winning awards, but about serving a genuine human need. It was a project that was born from his own struggle, from his own journey from noise to silence. And because it was so authentic, so rooted in a genuine sense of purpose, it resonated with people in a way that his previous work never had. He had found a way to align his passion with his purpose, his talent with his values. He had found a way to live in accordance with his own nature, and in doing so, he had found a sense of fulfillment that was far deeper, far more lasting than any external achievement. This is the discipline of action in practice. It is about asking yourself in every situation, what is the virtuous thing to do here? What is the right thing to do? What is the loving thing to do? It is about making choices that are not based on what is easy or what is popular or what is profitable, but on what is in alignment with your deepest values. It is about seeing every interaction, every decision, every moment of your day as an opportunity to practice your philosophy, to live your purpose, to be a force for good in the world. So how can you begin to practice this discipline in your own life? It starts with getting clear about your own values. What are the principles that you want to live your life by? What are the qualities that you admire most in other people? Write them down. Meditate on them. Make them a part of your daily consciousness. Then start to look for ways to put these values into action. If you value kindness, make it a point to perform a small act of kindness every day. If you value courage, make a choice to face a fear that has been holding you back. If you value justice, find a cause that you believe in and get involved. This is not about changing the world overnight. It is about changing your world, one small, virtuous action at a time. It is about creating a ripple effect of positivity that will spread far beyond your own life. This is the path of the Stoic, a path of quiet strength, of purposeful action, of a life lived in service to something greater than oneself. It is a path that is not always easy, but it is a path that is always meaningful. And it is a path that is open to you, right here, right now. All you have to do is take the first step. The third and final discipline of our Stoic journey, the one that ties everything together and provides the ultimate key to a life of tranquility and purpose, is the discipline of will. This is the discipline of accepting the things we cannot change, of embracing our fate, of learning to love whatever happens. The Stoics had a phrase for this, amor fati, which means love of fate. This is not a passive resignation to a predetermined destiny. It is an active, joyful embrace of reality in all of its messy, unpredictable, and often painful glory. It is the recognition that the universe is a wise and benevolent force, and that everything that happens, no matter how difficult it may seem at the time, is ultimately for our own good, for our own growth, for our own evolution. This is perhaps the most challenging of the Stoic disciplines, but it is also the most liberating. It is the discipline that allows us to find peace not in spite of our circumstances, but because of them. It is the discipline that allows us to transform every wound into a source of wisdom, every setback into a stepping stone, every tragedy into a triumph of the human spirit. It is the discipline that allows us to say, with a full and open heart, "This is my life. This is my path. And I would not have it any other way." Let's look at Leo one last time. His journey from a world of noise to a world of silence was not a smooth one. There were times when he was tempted to go back to his old ways, to lose himself in the familiar comfort of his work, to drown out the difficult emotions that were emerging in the stillness. But he persevered. He faced his demons. He embraced his vulnerability, and in doing so, he discovered a strength he never knew he had. He realized that his struggle with the noise was not a curse, but a gift. It was the very thing that had led him to the Stoics, to a new way of life, to his true purpose. He learned to love his fate, to see his entire life story, with all of its twists and turns, as a perfect, divinely orchestrated symphony. This is the power of the discipline of will. It is the power to find meaning in our suffering, to find beauty in our scars, to find a sense of gratitude for every single moment of our lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is the power to say yes to life, in all of its fullness, in all of its richness, in all of its complexity. So how can you cultivate this discipline in your own life? It begins with a practice of radical acceptance. The next time you are faced with a situation that you cannot change, a situation that is causing you pain or frustration, instead of resisting it, instead of fighting it, try to accept it. Say to yourself, this is what is happening right now. I cannot change it, but I can change my relationship to it. I can choose to see it not as a problem, but as a teacher. I can choose to learn the lesson that it is here to teach me. You can also practice gratitude. Every day, take a few moments to reflect on the things you are grateful for, especially the things you tend to take for granted. Your health, your relationships, the roof over your head, the food on your table. The more you focus on what you have, the less you will be disturbed by what you don't have. And finally, you can practice reframing. The next time you are faced with a challenge, ask yourself, what is the opportunity here? How can I use this situation to become a stronger, wiser, more compassionate person? This is the ultimate alchemy of the human spirit. It is the ability to turn lead into gold, to transform any adversity into a source of strength and inspiration. The discipline of will is the capstone of our Stoic practice. It is the final and most profound way to silence the noise, because it silences the ultimate source of all noise, our resistance to reality. When you learn to love your fate, you learn to live in a state of flow, in a state of harmony with the universe. You are no longer fighting against the current of life, but moving with it gracefully, effortlessly, joyfully. You have found your place in the cosmos. You have found your purpose. You have found your peace. Leo's journey was a testament to the transformative power of this ancient philosophy. He had started as a man who was lost in the noise, a man who was disconnected from himself, from others, from the world. But through the practice of the three Stoic disciplines, he had found his way back home. He had found his way to a life of clarity, of purpose, of deep and lasting fulfillment. He had become a man who was not just a master of sound, but a master of silence. A man who was not just a creator of illusions, but a revealer of truths. A man who was not just living a life, but living a legacy. And so the path is now clear. The choice is now yours. Will you continue to be a victim of the noise, a puppet of your circumstances, a ship adrift on a stormy sea? Or will you choose to become a student of the silence, a master of your own mind, the captain of your own soul? The teachings of the Stoics are not just a philosophy to be studied, but a way of life to be lived. They are a call to action, a call to courage, a call to become the best version of yourself. The world is waiting. Your purpose is waiting. The silence is waiting. I invite you to step into it, to embrace it, to let it transform you. Join us on this journey. Share your struggles, your insights, your victories. Let us create a community of modern-day warriors of the mind, a community that is dedicated to silencing the noise and amplifying the signal of purpose, of wisdom, of love. The symphony of your life is waiting to be written. The silence is the page. Your purpose is the pen. What will you write?